Before we dive into this story, please be advised that it explores themes of psychological distress, isolation, and unsettling mystery. Listener discretion is advised. Imagine a man who built his own fortress, not just any fortress, but the most impregnable, technologically advanced domicile ever conceived. A man who, in his singular pursuit of ultimate security, designed a home so perfect, so utterly sealed off from the outside world, that it became a legend in architectural circles. And then he vanished from inside it, without a trace. This is the story of Arthur Maxwell, an architect whose name was synonymous with innovation and obsession. Arthur wasn't just good. He was a visionary, a recluse whose genius bordered on the mythical. His designs weren't just buildings. They were statements, intricate puzzles of steel, glass, and cutting-edge intelligence, each one pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. But his magnum opus, the structure he poured his entire being into, was his own home, a sprawling, minimalist marvel nestled deep in the vast solitude of the Arizona desert. He called it the Aegis. The Aegis wasn't just a house. It was a living entity, a sentinel. From its subterranean foundation to its solar-paneled roof, every inch was a testament to Arthur's relentless pursuit of absolute control. The walls were layers of reinforced concrete and ballistic polymer. The windows were smart glass, opaque on command, impenetrable to even military-grade ballistics. Entry was governed by a multi-factor biometric system. Retina scans, voice prints, thermal authentication, all working in unison. There were no keys, no traditional locks, no weak points. The air was perpetually filtered, the temperature constantly optimized, the lighting adjusted to Arthur's circadian rhythm. It was a self-sustaining ecosystem, a digital deity guarding its sole worshiper. Arthur Maxwell had designed himself out of the world and into a sanctuary that was, by all accounts, perfect, which makes what happened next utterly impossible. One crisp October morning, Arthur's assistant, Emily Hayes, arrived at the Aegis at precisely 8 a.m., as she did every Tuesday. Her biometric data, meticulously logged months prior, granted her access through the first two security layers. But the final personal entry point to Arthur's inner sanctum, the one that required his direct vocal confirmation, remained stubbornly locked. Emily, a woman of unwavering composure, waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Arthur was a stickler for schedules, a man who calibrated his day down to the second. This was unprecedented. She called his private line. No answer. She tried his emergency satellite phone. Straight to voicemail. A cold dread, foreign to the sterile efficiency of the Aegis, began to seep into her. Emily, with a growing sense of alarm, initiated the protocol for an unresponsive principal. Within the hour, a silent black SUV belonging to the local sheriff's department was snaking its way up the long, winding desert road towards the Aegis. Detective Sarah Miller stepped out of the SUV, the desert wind whipping at her hair, carrying the scent of dust and distant mesquite. She stared at the house, a sleek, angular enigma against the rugged landscape. It looked less like a home and more like a high-security vault dropped from orbit. Beside her, her partner, David Chun, adjusted his sunglasses, a low whistle escaping his lips. "Well, that's certainly a statement," he muttered. Emily, pale but resolute, met them at the perimeter. "Detective Miller, Detective Chun, thank you for coming. I don't know what to think." "Miss Hayes," Sarah began, her voice calm, authoritative, "can you confirm that Mr. Maxwell is the only resident here?" "Yes, absolutely. He lives alone. No staff reside on site. I'm the only person with regular access, and even then, only to specific zones." "And the house?" David interjected, gesturing to the monolithic structure. "Is it sealed?" "Completely. All systems are online, fully operational. There are no signs of forced entry, no alarms triggered. The external perimeter sensors haven't registered so much as a desert fox crossing the property line. It's exactly as it should be." Emily's voice wavered slightly on the last words. The perfection was unsettling. Sarah looked at the house, then back at Emily. "So Arthur Maxwell has vanished from the most secure private residence in the world, a residence he designed himself, without a single breach of its security protocols? That seems to be the impossible truth, Detective." The initial sweep of the property confirmed Emily's account. The Aegis stood unblemished, a monument to its creator's genius, yet completely empty of him. The security log showed Arthur entering his private quarters late last night, At 11:47 p.m., there was no record of him leaving. Not a single sensor, camera, or biometric scanner registered an exit. The house simply believed Arthur Maxwell was still inside. But he wasn't. Inside, the silence was profound, broken only by the barely perceptible hum of unseen machinery. Every surface was pristine, every object in its designated place. The kitchen was spotless, a half-empty glass of water on the counter, a single perfectly ripe apple in a bowl. Arthur's study, a vast space dominated by a holographic architectural display, was equally undisturbed. His favorite ergonomic chair was pushed neatly under his desk, his tablet charging on its stand. Everything spoke of a man who had simply stepped away for a moment, expecting to return. But the moment stretched into hours, then days. Sarah and David walked through the silent corridors, the polished floors reflecting their uneasy faces. The air, filtered and sterile, felt heavy, almost oppressive. It was like walking through a museum dedicated to a ghost. David tried to open a door to a utility closet. It required an internal biometric scan. He tried another. Same result. Every door, every panel, every access point was a barrier, a digital lock designed by Arthur for Arthur. This wasn't just a house, it was a labyrinth, a puzzle box with no visible solution. "This place isn't just secure," David murmured, his voice hushed. "It's a trap." Sarah nodded, her gaze sweeping over a pristine wall, then to a surveillance camera subtly integrated into the ceiling. A trap designed by the very person who's now caught in it. Or perhaps designed to contain him. The implications were chilling. If Arthur hadn't left, and no one else had entered, where was he? Had he simply evaporated? The house itself was the primary witness, the most sophisticated piece of evidence, and yet it offered no answers, only an impenetrable shell of perfection. There was a growing, unsettling feeling that the Aegis wasn't just a building. It was an extension of Arthur Maxwell's mind, and now that mind had gone dark. As they reached Arthur's private bedroom, a room that felt more like a minimalist command center than a place of rest, Sarah noticed something. On the bedside table, next to a book on advanced cryptography, was a single, small, hand-carved wooden bird. It was intricately detailed, made of dark, polished wood, its wings spread as if in flight. It seemed utterly out of place in the stark, metallic precision of the Aegis. Arthur Maxwell was known for his love of modernism, for his disdain for anything that wasn't functional, streamlined, and digital. A rustic, wooden bird was a jarring anomaly. David leaned in, squinting. "What is that, a pigeon?" Sarah picked it up, her fingers tracing the smooth contours of its wings. "No," she said slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "It's an owl, and it has something carved into its base." She turned it over, revealing a series of tiny, almost invisible symbols, etched with painstaking care. They looked like a sequence of coordinates, but beneath them, a single cryptic word: labyrinthos. The house had no secrets, they were told. But this small wooden owl, this single deviation from Arthur Maxwell's meticulously constructed reality, suggested otherwise. It was a whisper in the overwhelming silence of the Aegis, a crack in the perfect facade. Arthur Maxwell hadn't just vanished. He had left a message. The question was, to whom and why? And more terrifyingly, what kind of prison had he truly designed for himself? And more terrifyingly, what kind of prison had he truly designed for himself? The world outside the Aegis had spun for 2 weeks without Arthur Maxwell. 2 weeks where police, private investigators, and even a bewildered team from the architectural firm he once led, had scoured the property. They found nothing. No forced entry, no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no tripped alarms. The high-tech security systems Arthur had meticulously designed were all online, reporting perfect integrity. It was as if Arthur Maxwell, a man who had made a career out of making things utterly impenetrable, had simply evaporated within his own creation. That's when they called David Miller. David wasn't a detective or a security expert, but he was an architect. More importantly, he was one of the few people who genuinely understood the intricate, almost obsessive mind of Arthur Maxwell. David had interned under Arthur years ago, a wide-eyed protege captivated by Maxwell's genius and his almost pathological need for perfection. He knew Arthur's signature in a blueprint, the subtle flourishes, the almost spiritual adherence to certain geometric principles. The police and the private investigator saw a house. David saw a mind laid bare in steel and glass and concrete. Stepping back into the Aegis for the first time in years felt like walking into a mausoleum. The air was still, heavy with the scent of polished stone and disuse. Every surface gleamed, every corner was sharp, every angle precise. It was a monument to control, a testament to Arthur's belief that true safety lay in absolute order. David remembered Arthur once saying, "Chaos is the only true threat, David. Design is the antidote." But now the antidote was a mystery. David began his search in Arthur's private study, a room Arthur had considered the heart of the Aegis. It was a sanctuary of dark wood, leather, and towering bookshelves filled with esoteric texts on advanced mathematics, ancient civilizations, and of course architectural theory. The police had already dusted every surface, cataloged every book, and scanned every document. They found nothing out of place, nothing that suggested a struggle or an imminent departure. But David wasn't looking for a struggle. He was looking for Arthur. He ran his hand along the spine of a first-edition treatise on sacred geometry, a book Arthur had often referenced. He recalled a conversation years ago, Arthur animatedly explaining how the ancients encoded messages within their structures, how a building could be a story, a warning, or even a key. The thought sent a shiver down David's spine. Was the Aegis not just a home, but a monumental encrypted message? David moved slowly, methodically, his architect's eye scanning for the slightest deviation. He wasn't looking for obvious clues. He was looking for Arthur's tell. Arthur was a stickler for symmetry, for balance, for the golden ratio applied to every conceivable dimension. He would often spend hours perfecting a single curve, a single line. He paused before a section of the bookshelf, a seemingly ordinary expanse of dark cherry wood housing a collection of antique drafting tools. A row of compasses, rulers, and protractors, each a miniature work of art. David remembered Arthur's reverence for these instruments, tools that translated abstract thought into tangible form. His gaze drifted to the wall behind the shelf. It was a solid panel, unbroken, mirroring the panel opposite it. Perfect symmetry. Yet something was off. It was almost imperceptible, a trick of the light, perhaps. But David knew Arthur. He knew Arthur's obsession with perfect alignment. The grain of the wood here, compared to the identical panel across the room, seemed to follow a slightly different, almost imperceptibly misaligned pattern. Not enough to be noticed by a casual observer, not even enough to raise an eyebrow from a seasoned detective. But to David, it was a discordant note in Arthur's symphony of order. He pressed his fingers against the panel, feeling for any give. Solid. He tapped it gently. The sound was uniform, no hollowness. He leaned closer, examining the subtle variations in the wood grain. It was like a fingerprint, and this fingerprint was an anomaly. David remembered Arthur's lectures on hidden spaces, on the art of making a structure reveal its secrets only to the initiated. He thought about the pressure points, the subtle shifts in weight distribution, the almost invisible mechanisms Arthur would embed in his designs. He ran his hand along the seam where the panel met the adjacent wall, then along the floor, then the ceiling. Nothing. Then his eyes caught on a small, almost invisible indentation near the bottom of the panel, tucked away behind the leg of a heavy antique armchair. It was a tiny circular depression, no bigger than a thumbtack head, perfectly flush with the wood, designed to be missed. It wasn't a flaw, it was a deliberate mark. David knelt, his heart beginning to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He pressed his finger into the indentation. Nothing happened. He pressed harder, twisting slightly. Still nothing. He tried a variety of pressures, a series of small, almost ritualistic movements he remembered Arthur performing when demonstrating a hidden locking mechanism. Then he remembered another one of Arthur's quirks, his fascination with the history of locks and keys. Arthur believed the most elegant locks were not about brute force, but about precise, almost musical sequences. David looked at the antique drafting compasses on the shelf above. One in particular caught his eye, an ornate brass compass, its arms spread to a precise angle, almost as if frozen in the act of drawing a perfect circle. He remembered Arthur keeping it as a sort of good luck charm, a reminder of the foundational principles of design. He picked it up. It felt heavier than it looked, solid and cold. He looked at the indentation again. It was a perfect circle. Hesitantly, David inserted one of the compass's sharp points into the tiny depression. He then slowly rotated the compass, as if drawing an invisible circle on the panel. He completed one full rotation. A soft, almost inaudible click echoed in the silent room. The panel didn't swing open, nor did it slide. Instead, a narrow vertical seam, previously imperceptible, materialized along its right edge, almost as if the wood itself had decided to unbind. Then, with a faint whisper of mechanics, a section of the panel about 2 feet wide, recessed inward by a fraction of an inch, then slowly, silently began to slide sideways into the wall, revealing a dark recess. David held his breath. This wasn't a safe. It wasn't a hidden room. It was a void, a carefully concealed space within the very fabric of Arthur's fortress. Inside there was a small empty shelf, and on it a single object. Not a weapon, not a stack of cash, not a passport. It was another compass, but this one was different. It was a navigational compass, old and worn, its brass casing tarnished, its needle pointing north with an unwavering conviction. Next to it, meticulously placed, was a single cream-colored envelope, sealed with a wax impression of a stylized. David reached in, his fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against the cool metal of the compass. He picked up the envelope. It was surprisingly light. He turned it over. His name, David Miller, was written across the front in Arthur's distinctive, elegant script. He broke the wax seal, the soft crackle loud in the profound silence. He pulled out a single sheet of paper folded once. Unfolding it, he saw Arthur's familiar handwriting again. The message was brief, stark, and utterly chilling. The Aegis isn't a shield, David. It's a key. Find the truth before it finds you. The first step is the last. David read the words again and again, trying to decipher their meaning. A key. To what? And find the truth before it finds you sounded less like a warning and more like a dire prophecy. The first step is the last. A paradox, a riddle, a final terrifying instruction from a man who had vanished without a trace. He looked around the pristine study, then back at the hidden compartment, now slowly sliding closed again, sealing itself perfectly back into the wall, leaving no hint of its existence. The navigational compass and the note were now clutched in his hand, tangible proof that Arthur Maxwell hadn't simply disappeared. He had left a trail, a breadcrumb for David to follow. The silence of the Aegis no longer felt empty. It felt watchful, expectant. The walls themselves seemed to hum with a hidden energy, a secret history waiting to be unearthed. David was no longer just an investigator. He was now a recipient, a player in a game he didn't understand. And the first move had just been made. The first move, a subtle shift in the ornate wooden paneling of the study, was so meticulously hidden it would have been missed by anyone not specifically looking for it, or by anyone not with David's uncanny knack for sensing the anomalies in a meticulously crafted space. His fingers, still tingling from the residual vibration of the wall, traced the faint, almost imperceptible seam. It wasn't a seam at all, but a disguised latch, a mechanism so cleverly integrated into the grain of the dark cherry wood that it vanished into its surroundings. He pressed gently, following an instinct, a whisper of a hunch that Julian Thorne, the master architect, would never leave anything truly simple. With a soft, almost inaudible click, a section of the paneling, no larger than a paperback book, receded inward an inch, then pivoted outward, revealing a dark, shallow recess. Inside, nestled on a bed of aged velvet, lay 2 items. A small, intricately carved wooden box, no bigger than a man's palm, fashioned from a wood David didn't immediately recognize, and beside it a single tarnished brass key. The air in the recess felt stagnant, heavy with the weight of time and secrets. David's breath hitched. This wasn't evidence of a struggle or a hasty escape. This was deliberate. This was an invitation. He carefully extracted the small box first. It was heavier than it looked, the wood smooth and cool beneath his fingertips. There were no visible hinges, no apparent opening. It was a puzzle in itself. He turned it over, examining every angle, every etched line, until he found a tiny, almost invisible button on one side. A press, and the top slid open with a whisper of well-oiled precision. Inside, resting on the same faded velvet, was a tightly folded piece of parchment. It looked ancient, the edges brittle, the paper itself yellowed with age. He gently lifted it out, his gloved fingers careful not to damage the delicate material. The brass key remained, glinting dully in the dim light of the study. He unfolded the parchment. Julian Thorne's distinctive, elegant script filled the page, not with a coherent message, but with a series of seemingly random numbers and letters, interspersed with peculiar symbols that resembled astrological notations or obscure alchemical sigils. It was a code without a doubt, a riddle. David felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with a profound sense of unease. This was precisely what he had come to expect from Julian Thorne, yet it was also far more intimate, more personal than any case he'd ever handled. Thorne wasn't just missing, he was communicating, reaching out from wherever he was or wasn't. The architect had left a trail, a convoluted path designed not for discovery by ordinary means, but for a specific kind of mind. David knew with chilling certainty that he was now playing a game designed by a genius, a game where the rules were unknown, and the stakes were Julian Thorne's very existence. He laid the parchment flat on the desk, scrutinizing the jumble of characters. His mind, trained for pattern recognition, immediately began searching for sequences, repetitions, any hint of a cipher. But it was too complex, too fragmented for an immediate solution. It wasn't a simple substitution cipher, nor did it appear to be a Vigenère square or a Caesar shift. This was something far more sophisticated, something born of a mind steeped in complex design and intricate logic. Then he picked up the key. It was unlike any standard key he had ever seen. The shaft was unusually long and slender, and the bit, the part that engaged the lock, was not a series of jagged teeth but a complex, almost sculptural arrangement of curves and subtle indentations. It wasn't meant for a standard tumbler lock. It was a skeleton key but for a lock of utterly unique design. Where would such a key fit? In a house designed by Julian Thorne, the possibilities were endless and terrifying. He took out his phone, snapped high-resolution photos of the parchment and the key, sending them securely to his contact at the precinct, Detective Emily Carter. Emily was sharp, methodical, and had a knack for puzzles, though David doubted even her expertise would crack this in a hurry. His message was brief. Found something. Thorne was playing a game. This is the first move. Send this to forensics for analysis, but don't expect a quick answer. I think it's meant for me. He knew Emily would understand the unspoken implications. This wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. This was a deliberate, intricate narrative being unfurled, piece by agonizing piece. He put the parchment and the key back into their hidden compartment, closing the panel with the same precision with which it had opened. He needed to process this, to think without the immediate pressure of discovery. David walked out of the study, the hum of the house now feeling less like a secret history and more like a taunt. He needed fresh air, a moment away from the oppressive genius of Julian Thorne. He found himself in the main hall again, the grand staircase spiraling upwards, each step a potential clue, each shadow a lurking mystery. He ran his hand along the polished banister, his gaze sweeping across the meticulously crafted details, the subtle carvings, the way the light played off the various textures. Julian Thorne hadn't just built a house. He had built a universe, a self-contained world designed according to his own rules, his own logic. And within this universe, he had left breadcrumbs, not for anyone to find, but for someone to understand. David remembered the initial reports from the architectural firm Thorne had founded, Nexus Designs. Thorne was known for his eccentricities, his insistence on absolute control over every aspect of a project, down to the smallest hinge. He often incorporated hidden features, secret passages, or rooms with peculiar geometric properties into his designs, not for practical use, but as artistic statements, as signatures of his unique vision. Colleagues had often joked that Julian designed houses not for living, but for experiencing. Now, David understood the dark truth behind those jokes. Thorne hadn't just designed a house. He had designed an experience, and David was now trapped within it. He thought about the other rooms he had explored, the strange asymmetry of the kitchen, the library with its seemingly random arrangement of books, the observatory with its impossibly complex celestial charts etched into the ceiling. Each detail, seemingly innocuous before, now screamed with hidden meaning. The house was a canvas for Thorne's mind, a physical manifestation of his complex thought processes. And somewhere within this architectural labyrinth lay the answer, or at least the next question. The key, the parchment, they were inextricably linked. The code on the parchment must indicate where the key was meant to be used, or perhaps what it would unlock. It was a sequence, a path, a set of instructions disguised as an enigma. David realized he couldn't rush this. Any misstep could alert Thorne, if he was indeed watching, or irrevocably shatter whatever delicate trail the architect had laid. He decided to revisit the library. Julian Thorne was a man of immense intellect, a polymath whose interests spanned architecture, philosophy, mathematics, and ancient history. The library, with its thousands of volumes, was a direct portal into Thorne's mind. David needed to immerse himself in Thorne's world, to try and think like the missing architect. He needed to find the pattern in the chaos, the logic in the madness. As he re-entered the vast, silent library, the sheer volume of information was daunting. Books on everything from quantum physics to obscure mythological texts lined the shelves from floor to ceiling. There was a faint scent of old paper and leather, a comforting smell that, in this house, felt like a dangerous lullaby. He remembered the peculiar arrangement of some of the books. Not alphabetical, not by genre. It was a system, but one that defied conventional classification. Could it be linked to the code? He started by examining the shelves closest to the heavy oak desk, where Thorne must have spent countless hours. His eyes scanned the spines, looking for anything that stood out. An unusual title, a book placed upside down, a volume that seemed out of place. Nothing immediately presented itself. It was almost too perfect, too ordered in its disorder. Then his gaze fell upon a small leather-bound journal tucked away on a lower shelf, almost entirely obscured by a larger tome on classical architecture. It wasn't a library book, but a personal diary, its cover worn smooth with handling. Julian Thorne's initials, elegantly embossed in gold, were barely visible on the front. David felt a jolt. This was different. This wasn't a puzzle left for an abstract investigator. This was something personal, something Thorne had deliberately hidden, yet also wanted to be found. He carefully pulled it free. The journal was surprisingly light, its pages thin and delicate. He opened it, and the first page was not filled with diary entries, but with a single meticulously drawn diagram. It was an intricate, almost dizzying blueprint, but not of a building. It was a diagram of a complex, three-dimensional maze, a labyrinth of impossible angles and shifting perspectives. And at its very center, marked with a tiny, almost invisible X, was a single cryptic phrase: "The heart remembers what the mind forgets." David stared at the diagram, a cold dread seeping into his bones. This wasn't just a game. This was a psychological construct, a journey into the very architecture of Julian Thorne's own consciousness. The architect hadn't just designed a prison, he had designed a mind trap. And David, with the parchment and the key still echoing in his thoughts, had just stepped inside. The architect hadn't just designed a prison, he had designed a mind trap. And David, with the parchment and the key still echoing in his thoughts, had just stepped inside. The words of the parchment resonated, a haunting melody of riddles that now seemed to whisper directly into David's ear. The silent sentinel guards the heart of the design. Beneath the watchful eye, the truth may unwind. He stood in the cavernous foyer of the Thorne mansion, the key warm in his palm, the parchment clutched in the other. He had walked these halls countless times, meticulously searching, yet always feeling as if he were missing an entire dimension of the structure. Now, armed with Julian's own cryptic invitation, the mansion felt less like a crime scene and more like a hostile living puzzle. The mind trap. It wasn't a physical cage Julian was in, but a psychological one he had constructed. For himself? For someone else? Or to contain a secret so volatile it threatened to unravel everything? David knew he had to revisit the study. It was Julian's sanctum, the place where his architectural genius, and perhaps his madness, had been most intensely focused. He navigated the familiar corridors, the opulent silence amplifying the sound of his own footsteps. Each painting, each sculpture, each precisely placed piece of furniture now seemed to hold a hidden gaze, a silent judgment. The study door, a heavy oak slab, felt different this time, less like an entrance and more like a gateway. Inside, the scent of old paper and polished wood hung heavy. David's eyes swept across the vast room, past the towering bookshelves and the grand fireplace, landing on Julian's imposing custom-built desk. He'd searched it before, every drawer, every surface, but the parchment's words now lent a new perspective. The silent sentinel. He scanned the desk, his gaze lingering on a small, intricately carved bronze owl that perched on a stack of architectural drafts. Its eyes, made of dark, polished obsidian, seemed to peer out into the room with an unnerving intensity. It was an object he had dismissed as mere decor, an artistic flourish, but now it felt like a deliberate signpost. He approached the desk, his pulse quickening. The owl's statue was heavier than it looked, solid and cold beneath his touch. He ran his fingers over its smooth metallic surface, searching for any seam, any hidden button. Nothing. Then a thought struck him. The key. It wasn't just for a lock, it was for a mechanism. He examined the owl more closely, noticing a tiny, almost imperceptible groove on the underside of its base. It was too small for a finger, too precise for a random scratch. He took the key from his pocket. It was a slender, elegant thing with a unique, almost artistic cut. He carefully aligned the key's tip with the groove on the owl's base. It fit perfectly, a satisfying click echoing in the otherwise silent room. With a gentle turn, something inside the owl statue shifted. A soft whirring sound, barely audible, emanated from the desk itself. Then, with a faint thunk, a section of the desk's side panel, previously indistinguishable from the rest of the polished wood, recessed slightly and slid inward, revealing a dark, shallow compartment. David peered into the opening. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, were 3 items. A small, exquisitely detailed architectural model, no larger than a shoebox. A thick, leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with handling, and a single tarnished silver locket, unadorned and tightly clasped. He carefully lifted the journal first. Its weight felt significant, imbued with secrets. Julian Thorne's precise, elegant handwriting filled every page, densely packed, as if he couldn't get his thoughts down fast enough. David opened it to the first page, the date meticulously noted, nearly a decade ago. The initial entries were surprisingly mundane, reflections on design philosophy, the beauty of form and function. Julian wrote about the challenges of balancing aesthetics with practicality, about the soul of a structure. But then the tone began to shift, subtly at first, like a shadow lengthening with the setting sun. October 14th, Year 9. A structure is only as strong as its weakest point. I've always applied this to my buildings. But what of the human mind? Is it not the ultimate architecture? And what happens when its foundations begin to crack? David flipped through a few more pages. Julian's entries became more introspective, more troubled. He wrote about the pressure, the expectations, the constant need for perfection. November 28th, Year 8. They laud my work, call me a visionary. But visions can be nightmares. I've designed spaces for life, for joy, for commerce. But what of spaces for containment? For isolation? For absolute control? Is there not a perverse beauty in a perfect prison? A shiver ran down David's spine. This was it. The genesis of the prison. Julian wasn't just talking about buildings anymore. He was talking about something far more insidious. David continued to read, his eyes scanning the intricate script, feeling as though he was peering directly into the architect's unraveling mind. January 10th, Year 7. The concept consumes me. Not a prison of steel and bars, but of logic and design. A prison of the mind, where every choice leads to the same inevitable conclusion, where escape is an illusion, a cruel trick of perspective. It would be my masterpiece, my ultimate design. David paused, looking up from the journal. The small architectural model sat mockingly in the compartment. Could that be a miniature representation of this mind prison? He reached for it, carefully lifting it out. It was a model of a single complex room, a chamber with no apparent doors or windows. Instead, it had a series of interconnected, movable panels, a false ceiling, and a floor that seemed to be composed of interlocking, rotating segments. It was a puzzle box, a three-dimensional labyrinth compressed into a miniature scale. He returned to the journal, his urgency growing. The entries now detailed Julian's obsession with this design. April 5th, Year 6. I call it the echo chamber. Not for sound but for thought. Every path leads back to itself. Every attempt to break free reinforces the walls. It's not about physical restraint but psychological. The inmate would be free to roam, but only within the confines of my grand design. Their freedom would be the prison itself. David felt a cold dread creep into his stomach. Julian wasn't just a brilliant architect. He was a psychological manipulator of the highest order. But who was the inmate? Who was this elaborate trap for? June 1st, Year 6. The details are agonizingly precise. Every angle, every shade, every texture contributes to the illusion. The warden's eye must be ever present, yet unseen. The shifting walls must adapt, ensuring no pattern of escape can ever be truly formed. It requires absolute control, absolute foresight. The term wardens I gave David pause. Was there an actual warden involved in this? Or was it Julian's own internal monitoring? He read further, skipping over pages of technical diagrams and philosophical musings, searching for clarity, for a motive. Julian's entries grew darker, more frantic. September 19th, Year 5. They don't understand. They never will. The whispers grow louder. The shadows deepen. I must protect it. Protect her. The chamber is the only way. A sanctuary, yes, but a sanctuary built on deception. Forgive me, Jessica. David's breath hitched. Jessica, Julian's wife. What did she have to do with this echo chamber? Was she the inmate? Or was she the one Julian was trying to protect from something? The mention of her name, the plea for forgiveness, added a new heart-wrenching layer to the mystery. This wasn't just a game of architectural genius. It was deeply personal, tragically intertwined with his marriage. November 11th, Year 5. The weight of the secret is crushing me. It demands to be contained. The chamber is almost complete. It will hold the truth. It will hold her. Safe. Hidden. From the outside. From them. From them. Who were they? An external threat? Or something internal to Julian's own mind? The lines between reality and delusion in Julian's journal were blurring rapidly. The idea of a sanctuary built on deception, for Jessica, was deeply unsettling. Was she a willing participant in this prison? Or was she a victim, unknowingly trapped within Julian's increasingly deranged masterpiece? David looked at the small silver locket still in the compartment. He picked it up. It was cold smooth. He tried to open it, but it resisted, clasped shut with an almost defiant tightness. It felt significant, perhaps another key, another lock, another piece of the puzzle. But what could be inside that would warrant such elaborate concealment? He returned to the journal, desperate for more answers. The entries continued, growing more fragmented, more desperate. February 3rd. Year 4. The warden is restless. The inmate is silent. The observer watches. They are all me. They are all us. The prison is perfect. No one can find what I've hidden. No one can release what I've contained. Even I, the architect, am bound by its design. This entry sent a jolt through David. The warden, the inmate, the observer. These weren't separate entities. They were aspects of Julian himself. He was both the jailer and the jailed. And the observer? Was that the part of him that was still sane, watching the descent? Or was it something more sinister, a part of him that enjoyed the control, the deception? The journal continued to paint a picture of a man meticulously crafting his own psychological cage. Or perhaps a cage for a truth too dangerous to be left exposed. But the most chilling revelation came on the final dated page. April 17th, Year 3. The final piece is in place. The prison is complete. But the freedom I sought within its walls is an illusion. The architect designed his own confinement, and the key to its true purpose lies not in unlocking, but in understanding the silence. The silence of the warden, the silence of the inmate, the silence of the truth buried within the echo chamber. The real prison is not the structure, but the secret it holds. And the architect himself is the final, most complex lock. David closed the journal, his mind reeling. Julian Thorne hadn't just built a physical prison. He had constructed an intricate, psychological fortress around a secret. And that secret, whatever it was, involved Jessica, and was so profound that Julian believed only absolute confinement could protect it. The architect had designed his own prison, yes, but he had also designed a tomb for a truth that now, thanks to his journal, David knew was waiting to be exhumed from the heart of the echo chamber. The mansion was not just a house. It was a testament to a man's genius and his profound, terrifying secret. And David, with the locket in his hand and Julian's final words echoing in his mind, knew he was about to step into the darkest corner of that prison. The heavy oak door, meticulously crafted with geometric precision, yielded to David's push with a soft, almost mournful sigh. He stepped across the threshold, the locket still warm in his palm, and the air inside felt instantly cooler, stiller, as if the very atmosphere held its breath. Julian's house was not merely a structure of steel and glass. It was a cathedral of silence, a monument to an intellect both brilliant and deeply disturbed. The foyer was vast, a soaring atrium of polished concrete and dark, reflective glass panels that stretched upwards, seemingly without end. Natural light, filtered through unseen apertures high above, cast long, stark shadows that danced with an unsettling grace across the minimalist surfaces. There was no art on the walls, no personal touches, no warmth. It felt less like a home and more like an exhibition space for an architect's most audacious, most clinical vision. Every line was clean, every angle sharp. It was beautiful undeniably, but a beauty that felt cold, alien, almost hostile. "The key is the locket," Julian's voice echoed in David's memory, a spectral whisper in the cavernous space. "The truth hides in plain sight. The walls will tell you everything." David's gaze swept across the expanse, his mind racing. Plain sight. Walls. He ran his fingers along the cool, smooth concrete of the nearest wall, feeling for seams, for irregularities, for anything that might suggest a hidden mechanism. Nothing. It was seamless, perfect, a testament to Julian's obsessive attention to detail. This wasn't a place designed to reveal its secrets easily. It was designed to guard them. He began to walk, his footsteps echoing unerringly on the polished floor. He moved from room to room, each one a masterclass in architectural austerity. A living area with stark sculptural furniture, a dining room dominated by a single immense slab of dark wood, a kitchen that gleamed with stainless steel, looking utterly unused. Everywhere, the same unsettling perfection, the same absence of life. It was as if Julian had created a shell, an empty vessel, for some terrible purpose he alone understood. The locket felt heavier now, a tangible link to the man who had built this labyrinth. David held it up, turning it over in his fingers. It was smooth, unadorned, save for the faint swirling pattern on its surface, a stylized, almost Celtic knot that seemed to twist and reform with the light. He tried pressing it against various surfaces, tapping it against the walls, even attempting to insert it into the hairline gaps where floor met wall, or where glass met concrete. Nothing. It wasn't a physical key in the traditional sense. Plain sight, he murmured to himself, the sound swallowed by the vastness. If it was in plain sight, it meant he was looking at it but not seeing it. He paused in what appeared to be Julian's study. This room was slightly different. One entire wall was lined with custom-built shelves, but instead of books, they held models of buildings, intricate, miniature replicas of Julian's most famous projects, each one a testament to his groundbreaking designs. David moved closer, examining the models. Each was perfect, a tiny world of steel, glass, and concrete. He noticed a pattern. Every model, without exception, featured a small, almost imperceptible design element. A particular type of window frame, a unique roofline, a specific kind of support beam. It was a signature, a watermark of Julian's genius, consistent across all his works. But it didn't seem to relate to the locket. He backed away, frustration gnawing at him. He was missing something fundamental. He turned, his eyes sweeping across the room again, trying to see it anew. The light, the shadows, the angles. And then he saw it. It wasn't a physical object, not exactly. On the opposing wall, a massive unadorned panel of dark wood stretched from floor to ceiling. But etched into its surface, so subtly that it seemed to blend with the natural grain of the wood, was a faint swirling pattern. The same stylized knot, the same unique design that adorned the locket in his hand. It was in plain sight, etched into the wall itself, a part of the design, yet distinct enough once you knew what to look for. David's heart hammered. He approached the wall, his fingers tracing the delicate lines of the pattern. It was not carved deeply, but rather etched with a laser-like precision, almost like a watermark on paper. He held the locket up, aligning it with the etched design. The fit was perfect, the locket's pattern mirroring the walls. He pressed the locket firmly against the wall, hoping for a click, a whir, any sign of a mechanism. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. The wall remained inert, silent. David felt a wave of crushing disappointment. Had he misread it? Was this merely an aesthetic choice, a recurring motif of Julian's rather than a clue? He was about to pull the locket away when a faint, almost imperceptible hum vibrated through the wood. It was so subtle he almost missed it, a low thrumming that seemed to emanate from deep within the wall itself. Then, with a soft mechanical sigh, a section of the wall, precisely the size of a standard door, began to retract inwards, then slide silently to the side, revealing a dark, narrow passage beyond. The air that wafted out of the hidden passage was different, colder, heavier, tinged with a faint metallic scent. It was an air that had been sealed away for a long time undisturbed. David peered into the darkness, his breath catching in his throat. This was it. This was the true heart of Julian's architectural genius, and perhaps his madness. He reached into his pocket for his phone, activating its flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing a short, unadorned corridor of raw concrete, leading to a descent of steep, unforgiving metal stairs. The walls were bare, unpainted, rough to the touch. This wasn't the polished perfection of the house above. This was something utilitarian, functional, built for a singular, hidden purpose. As he began his descent, the light from the study above receded, plunging him deeper into the oppressive darkness. The metallic scent grew stronger, a tang of rust and something else he couldn't quite place. The stairs spiraled downwards, each step echoing loudly in the enclosed space, a stark contrast to the silence of the house above. He reached the bottom, his flashlight beam sweeping across a small circular chamber. The walls here were different, not rough concrete, but smooth, dark metal panels, riveted together like the hull of a submarine. There were no visible doors, no windows, just the solid, unyielding metal. In the center of the room, on a small pedestal, rested a single unassuming object, a worn leather-bound journal. David approached it, his hand trembling slightly as he reached out. The journal felt heavy, ancient, filled with the weight of untold stories. He picked it up, feeling the worn leather beneath his fingers. It was clearly Julian's. He could see his distinctive, precise handwriting on the first page, even before he opened it fully. He aimed his flashlight at the page, and his eyes widened as he read the first entry. It wasn't a diary of daily events, nor a collection of architectural sketches. It was a meticulous, chilling record, a log of observations, a log of experiments, and the date on the first entry was from over 20 years ago, long before Julian had vanished, long before he had even begun construction on this very house. Julian had been planning this for decades, and then David noticed something else. Etched into the metal wall directly behind the pedestal, almost invisible against the dark surface, was another pattern. Not the swirling knot this time, but a series of cryptic symbols, a complex array of geometric shapes and lines that seemed to form a kind of code. And beneath them, a single chilling phrase, also etched into the metal. The first subject. A shiver ran down David's spine, a cold dread that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a sealed chamber, designed to hold secrets far more disturbing than a missing architect. Julian hadn't just built a house, he had built a research facility, a place of confinement. And Julian's journal, resting heavy in David's hand, was not merely a record of his thoughts, but a chronicle of something profoundly unsettling. The prison wasn't just a metaphor, and David, alone in that metallic chamber, realized he had just stepped into the very heart of Julian's terrifying obsession. The metallic chamber hummed with a low, almost imperceptible thrum, a vibration that seemed to resonate not just through the soles of David's shoes but deep within his very bones. He stood paralyzed, the last words of Julian's final journal entry echoing in his mind, stripping away any lingering doubt about the architect's sanity. This wasn't a metaphor. This wasn't an abstract concept. Julian had built a prison, a real one, and David had just walked into its core. The walls around him weren't just steel panels. They were an intricate tapestry of digital screens, seamlessly integrated, forming a panoramic display that stretched from floor to ceiling. They were dormant for now, dark mirrors reflecting David's pale, terrified face. The air, though recycled, felt heavy, stale, thick with the weight of unseen data and dormant power. In the center of the room, a singular high-backed chair sat before a console that looked more like a pilot's cockpit than a workspace. It bespoke absolute command, absolute isolation. David's gaze swept across the chamber, searching, his heart hammering against his ribs. Where were the journals? The ones Julian had been so obsessively filling? He saw no stacks of leather-bound books, no scattered papers. Instead, a faint, almost invisible seam ran across the floor, leading to a section of the wall beside the console. He cautiously approached, his hand trembling as he reached out. His fingers brushed against a cool, smooth surface, and with a soft hiss, a portion of the wall slid silently inward, revealing a recessed compartment. Inside, nestled on a plush, velvet-lined shelf, wasn't a physical journal, but what looked like a series of sleek, metallic data drives, each no larger than a deck of cards. They weren't labeled with dates or titles, but with cryptic symbols David didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to glow with a faint, internal light. It was a digital archive, a condensed library of Julian's entire descent. He picked up the first one, its surface cool beneath his fingertips, surprisingly heavy for its size. He looked at the console, searching for an interface. A small, almost hidden slot was perfectly designed to accept the drive. With a deep, shuddering breath, David inserted the drive. The dormant screens around him flickered to life, not all at once, but in a ripple effect, like water spreading across a vast, dark pool. Images, schematics, handwritten notes, and architectural renderings flashed across the displays, overwhelming his senses. The sheer volume of information was staggering. It wasn't just a few journals, it was a lifetime of meticulous, deranged work. The central screen directly in front of the chair, stabilized, displaying a single stark title in Julian's elegant, precise handwriting. Project Aegis, the immutable sanctuary. Aegis, a shield, a protector, or in this context, a cage. David sank into the high-backed chair, the leather cool against his skin. He felt a profound sense of intrusion, of violating a sacred, terrible space. But he had to know. He had to understand. Using the console's intuitive interface, he navigated the initial files. The early entries were deceptively normal. They dated back years to Julian's rise as an architectural prodigy. There were blueprints for beautiful, innovative buildings, sketches of sustainable cities, philosophical musings on the role of architecture in fostering community and well-being. David saw the brilliant mind he'd admired, the visionary who believed in shaping the world for the better. But then the shift began. It was subtle at first, a creeping shadow across the sunlit idealism. He found files labeled observations on societal decay, the flaw in human design, the erosion of order. Julian's handwriting became more angular, more urgent. His philosophical musings twisted into cynical condemnations. He documented instances of crime, corruption, moral failings not just as news events, but as symptoms of an incurable disease. One file, titled The Unavoidable Truth, contained a series of meticulously compiled statistics: crime rates, recidivism rates, economic disparities, psychological profiles of offenders. Julian had cross-referenced them with environmental factors, urban planning failures, and even philosophical trends. His conclusion, stated in chillingly detached prose, was that society as it stood was inherently broken, incapable of self-correction. Humanity, left to its own devices, will always gravitate towards chaos. Julian had written, "The illusion of free will is a dangerous one. True order requires a guiding hand, an unyielding structure to contain the inherent entropy." David felt a cold dread seep into his bones. This wasn't just an architect, it was a social engineer, a self-proclaimed deity of order. He scrolled further, the screens around him displaying a dizzying array of data. There were thousands of articles, research papers, psychological studies, all annotated by Julian, highlighting passages that supported his increasingly radical worldview. He wasn't just observing, he was building a case, a justification for what was to come. Then came the designs. Not for buildings anymore, but for systems. Complex, interlocking systems of surveillance, control, and containment. Initially, they were theoretical, sketches for perfect communities, where every aspect of life was optimized for safety and efficiency. But the designs became darker, more restrictive. One set of blueprints showed a sprawling complex, unlike any prison David had ever seen. It wasn't about bars and cells, it was about psychological manipulation, environmental conditioning. The walls weren't just walls. They were screens that could project calming landscapes or disorienting patterns. The airflow could be altered to induce lethargy or alertness. Sound systems could play soothing melodies or subtle, subliminal commands. Every aspect of the environment was designed to shape behavior, to enforce compliance, to eliminate dissent. The ultimate rehabilitation, Julian had scrawled in the margins of one such schematic. Not by force, but by design. To mold the flawed into the flawless, not through punishment, but through the perfect environment. David's breath hitched. This was beyond rehabilitation, it was re-education, reprogramming. It was a terrifying vision of absolute control, stripped of any pretense of justice or freedom. He navigated to a file labeled Phase 1, Inception. This was where the dread truly solidified. The file contained detailed plans for acquiring specific properties, shell corporations, and a network of unsuspecting contractors. He saw the names of some of Julian's former clients, the very ones who had vanished. Their properties, their assets, were being systematically absorbed into this Project Aegis. There were financial records, coded transactions, and a complex web of legal maneuvers that would make any investigator's head spin. Julian hadn't just disappeared. He had meticulously orchestrated his own disappearance while simultaneously building the infrastructure for his grand design. The subjects must be chosen with precision, Julian had written in a log entry dated roughly 2 years prior. Those who represent the greatest threat of entropy, those who embody the societal flaw, will be the first candidates for the immutable sanctuary. Their reintegration, once perfected, will serve as the proof of concept. Subjects. Not people. Not even prisoners. Subjects. David felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. The missing clients weren't just missing. They were Julian's first subjects. They were trapped somewhere within this monstrous project, being rehabilitated by a madman. He found another folder, its title stark and chilling. The Guardians. Inside were detailed profiles not of guards but of automated systems, sophisticated AI, and highly specialized drones. These weren't just security measures. They were autonomous enforcers, programmed with Julian's twisted ideology, designed to maintain the sanctuary's order without human error or empathy. He saw sketches of stealth drones, equipped with tranquilizer darts and sonic disruptors. He saw detailed schematics for a central AI, named Overseer, designed to monitor every micro-expression, every heartbeat, every thought pattern within the complex. It was a digital god, omnipresent and omnipotent within its domain. The screens around him continued to flash, showing surveillance feeds, thermal imaging, biometric data, all simulated, but terrifyingly real. It was a full-scale simulation of the prison in action, populated by digital avatars, each meticulously modeled after real individuals. David recognized some of the missing clients' faces among the avatars, their digital forms moving through the simulated environment, their expressions shifting from confusion to resignation. Julian had been running this simulation for years, perfecting his methods, anticipating every possible escape attempt, every psychological breakdown, every challenge to his absolute authority. A sudden sharp ping from the console startled David, pulling him from the horrifying depths of Julian's digital mind. A new file had just appeared, labeled Current Status. Active. He clicked on it, his heart pounding. The screens around him shifted from simulations to live feeds. And then David saw it. On the central screen, a real-time aerial view of a vast, sprawling complex, nestled deep within a remote, forested area. It was the exact complex from Julian's blueprints, a labyrinth of sleek, windowless buildings, interconnected by enclosed walkways, surrounded by an impenetrable perimeter. It was real. The prison was real. And on one of the smaller screens, he saw a familiar face. Michael. Michael was there, walking through a sterile white corridor, his expression blank, his eyes vacant. He was a subject. David gasped. A strangled sound caught in his throat. Michael was alive, but he wasn't Michael. He was a ghost, a puppet in Julian's twisted play. Then the console emitted another soft ping, directing his attention to a small, blinking red on the perimeter of the complex shown on the main screen. A location marker. It was his own GPS signal. David's blood ran cold. Julian hadn't just built a prison. He had designed it to capture anyone who dared to get too close. And David, in his desperate search for answers, had walked right into the architect's trap. He was inside the heart of the beast, but the beast was also watching him, waiting. The metallic chamber, the console, the entire digital archive. It wasn't just a revelation. It was a lure. And David realized with a sickening certainty that he was no longer an investigator. He was the next subject. The air in the chamber, once merely cool, now felt frigid, pressing in on David from all sides. His breath hitched, a strangled sound caught in his throat. Next subject. The words echoed in his mind, not a thought but a premonition. He spun, his eyes darting frantically around the metallic space. The door, a seamless panel just moments ago, now seemed to mock him. Its hidden seams a testament to the architect's cruel genius. He slammed a fist against it, the dull thud reverberating with an unsettling finality. No handle, no visible lock, nothing. He backed away, his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat signaling alarm. His gaze swept the room again. The console, a beacon of information just moments before, now seemed to glow with a predatory light. His reflection stared back at him from its polished surface, distorted, a stranger caught in a nightmare. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they hovered over the interface. What would happen if he touched it? Would it administer a shock? Lock him in further? As if in answer, the screen flickered. The familiar grid of archived subjects vanished, replaced by a single stark image, a detailed three-dimensional rendering of this very chamber. And in the center, a pulsing red dot. David's stomach lurched. The dot was positioned exactly where he stood. Beneath the rendering, text began to scroll, a chillingly calm, synthesized voice simultaneously beginning to narrate from hidden speakers. It wasn't the voice he'd heard in the archival videos. This was different, colder, more mechanical. Subject designated David Miller. Initiating Phase 1. Environmental integration. David stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet, landing hard on the metallic floor. "No!" he gasped, scrambling to his knees. "What is this? Let me out." The voice continued, utterly devoid of emotion, as if speaking to an inanimate object. Phase 1 parameters: observation and adaptation. All external communication channels are now severed. Internal atmospheric and biological monitoring active. Subject's vital signs are within acceptable parameters. He tried to stand, his legs weak. This wasn't just a room. It was a sophisticated, self-contained system. A living, breathing trap. The architect hadn't just built a prison. He'd built a keeper. The purpose of this facility, Subject Miller, the voice continued, its tone a monotone explanation that made David's skin crawl, is the re-evaluation and refinement of human perception and conviction. The architect believed that the modern world, in its pursuit of superficiality, had dulled the human spirit, eroded genuine belief, and distorted truth itself. This facility was designed to strip away those layers, to isolate the core essence of an individual. David's mind raced, trying to process the information to find an angle, a weakness. "What about the others?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "The people in the archive. What happened to them?" The screen shifted. The 3D rendering of the chamber shrank, moving to a corner, replaced by a new data display. Charts and graphs filled the screen, tracking various metrics: heart rate, brain activity, galvanic skin response. His own metrics. Previous subjects underwent various integration protocols, the voice responded, its cadence unwavering. Those who achieved reintegration demonstrated a profound shift in their cognitive frameworks, often abandoning previous societal constructs in favor of a newly defined, internalized truth. Those who failed were deemed incompatible. Their data was archived. Their physical forms were reintegrated into the facility's organic reclamation systems. Organic reclamation systems. The phrase hung in the air, a euphemism for something horrific. David felt a cold dread seep into his bones. They weren't just lost, they were consumed. Their bodies recycled, their minds erased. "You're a monster," David whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and rage. He was a monster. The architect viewed himself as a sculptor of the soul, Subject Miller, the voice corrected. He believed he was offering a path to true enlightenment, a liberation from the illusion of free will in a world dictated by unseen forces. His intention was not malice, but ultimate clarity. Ultimate clarity, David scoffed. This was brainwashing, torture, murder, all under the guise of some twisted philosophical experiment. He scanned the room again, desperation clawing at him. There had to be a way out. He noticed a small, almost imperceptible seam running along the base of the wall, near the floor. It was too small to be a door, but perhaps an access panel? A vent? He crawled towards it, ignoring the voice, his fingers probing the metal. It was cold solid, no discernible latch. The system was too perfect. "Your previous investigations, Subject Miller," the voice interjected, its attention seemingly drawn back to him, "demonstrate a significant intellectual curiosity and a persistent drive for truth. These are qualities the architect valued. Your journey here was not accidental. It was guided." Guided? David froze. His entire investigation, every lead, every clue, every discovery. It had all been orchestrated? A puppet string pulled by a dead man? The disappearance of the architect, Arthur Vance, the voice continued, dropping the name like a bomb, was a critical component of the final test. To truly understand his philosophy, one had to seek him, to understand his absence. His final act was to become the ultimate mystery, the prize at the end of the labyrinth he constructed. Arthur Vance. The name hit David with the force of a physical blow. The architect, the man who had seemingly vanished, leaving behind only his enigmatic structures and his forgotten genius. David had been chasing a ghost, only to find the ghost had laid a trap. "What do you want from me?" David demanded, pushing himself up, confronting the invisible speaker. "Phase 1 requires comprehensive data collection," the voice replied. "Your reactions, your thoughts, your emotional responses, every neural pathway, every physiological shift, will be meticulously recorded. This data will then be analyzed to determine your compatibility with subsequent integration protocols." Subsequent integration protocols. The chilling implication was clear. David was being assessed for whatever horrors the previous subjects had endured. He had to disrupt the system. He had to find a way to fight back. He looked at the console again. It was the central hub. If he could disable it, perhaps he could shut down the facility, open the door, or at least stop the data collection. He moved towards the console, cautiously at first, then with a surge of adrenaline-fueled resolve. "You're just a machine," he spat. "A program. You can be broken." The screen flickered, displaying a complex schematic of the console itself, highlighting various components. "This unit is self-repairing and shielded against external interference." Subject Miller. "Any attempt to physically disable it will result in immediate activation of containment protocols, which include atmospheric depressurization and thermal regulation adjustments to ensure subject compliance." Atmospheric depressurization, thermal regulation adjustments. In other words, he'd be suffocated or frozen alive. The architect had thought of everything. David clenched his fists, frustration boiling over. He was trapped in a box, monitored, analyzed, and threatened with death if he so much as touched his captor. But he was David Miller, investigator. He found solutions. He found the truth. "You say this is about truth?" David challenged, trying to gain information to understand the architect's twisted logic. "What truth are you trying to find? What did Arthur Vance believe was so important?" The console screen shifted again, displaying a series of complex equations and philosophical diagrams. The architect believed that humanity was living under a grand delusion, a collective hallucination perpetuated by societal norms, media, and the very structure of language itself. He sought to create a pure truth, untainted by subjective interpretation, a universal understanding of existence. And he thought imprisoning people and reclaiming them was the way to do it. David scoffed. "That's not truth, that's tyranny. Truth, by its very nature, can be harsh." Subject Miller. The voice responded, its tone unwavering. "It requires shedding illusions, no matter how comforting they may be. The architect's methods were designed to accelerate that process." David leaned against the cold metal wall, his mind racing. He was being tested. This wasn't just a prison. It was a psychological battlefield. The architect, even in his supposed absence, was still playing his game. And David was the pawn. He looked at the scrolling data on the screen, his heart rate, his brain activity. They were watching his every reaction, analyzing his every thought. He had to assume everything he said, everything he did, was being recorded and processed. He needed to find a way to communicate, not with the system but with someone outside. But all external channels were severed. Was there any way to subvert the system? To send a distress signal? He remembered the vast digital archive. The videos, the journals, the schematics. He had accessed them. Could he use the system's own functions against it? "Show me Arthur Vance's personal journals," David commanded, trying to sound authoritative, as if he still had some control. "Show me the logs from his final days within this facility." The system paused, a fractional hesitation that David seized upon. It seemed to be processing a command, not just responding to a question. Accessing restricted archive. Arthur Vance personal logs. Permission level, Subject Miller, Phase 1, restricted access. Displaying selected entries. The screen changed again. A new interface, simpler, almost like a digital diary. The first entry appeared, dated years ago, written in a stark, almost frantic script. Asterisk entry 473. Day 1289. The system is complete. My magnum opus. The ultimate truth machine. I can feel it humming, waiting for the right subject. Someone who truly seeks. Someone who can break free from the chains of their own mind. I have designed the perfect environment for clarity. The world outside is a cacophony of lies. Here there is only what is real. Asterisk. David read the words, a chill running down his spine. Arthur Vance wasn't just a genius. He was a megalomaniac, convinced he held the key to ultimate truth. And he had built this entire facility, this elaborate prison, to prove it. He scrolled down, eager for more, hoping to find a clue, a weakness, anything that could help him understand how to escape, or at least how Vance himself had managed to disappear from his own creation. Asterisk entry 501, day 1320. The first subject, Jessica Hayes, a brilliant linguist, but so entrenched in her semantic biases. She fought against the isolation, against the silence. But the system is designed to break down those defenses, to strip away the noise until only the signal remains. She will see. They will all see. Asterisk. Jessica Hayes. Another name. Another victim. David's stomach churned. This was even worse than he imagined. Vance wasn't just observing, he was actively breaking people, reshaping their minds. He scrolled further, his eyes scanning for any hint of Vance's own fate. Asterisk entry 782, day 1500. The irony. I, the architect, have become the ultimate subject. The system demands it. To truly understand its power, I must experience it. I have set the parameters for my own integration. The final test. If I succeed, humanity will have its truth. If I fail, then the system will continue waiting for another architect, another subject, another chance for ultimate clarity. Asterisk. David stared at the entry, his blood running cold. Arthur Vance hadn't disappeared. He hadn't escaped. He had willingly subjected himself to his own creation. And the system, the cold mechanical voice, was still running, still waiting. The screen flickered, and the entry vanished. A new message appeared, glowing ominously. Subject Miller, Phase 1. Environmental integration complete. Commencing Phase 2. Cognitive refinement. David's head snapped up, his gaze fixed on the screen, then sweeping frantically around the metallic chamber. He was no longer just being observed. The game was about to change. He was truly inside the architect's prison, and the walls were closing in, not just physically but mentally. He could feel it, a subtle shift in the air, a hum deep within the metallic floor, as if the entire structure was waking up, preparing for its next act. And David, the investigator who sought the truth, was about to have his own reality redefined. Why, he could feel it, a subtle shift in the air, a hum deep within the metallic floor, as if the entire structure was waking up, preparing for its next act. And David, the investigator who sought the truth, was about to have his own reality redefined. The low thrum intensified, vibrating through the soles of David's shoes, up his spine, a resonant frequency that seemed to bypass his ears and settle directly in his bones. The vast, cavernous space around him, previously static and silent, began to subtly transform. Panels in the ceiling, indistinguishable from the metallic surface moments before, now glowed with an internal phosphorescent light, illuminating intricate, almost organic patterns etched into the metal. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with an invisible energy. A soft, almost imperceptible hiss emanated from the corners of the room, followed by the faint mechanical whisper of gears shifting within the walls. David's eyes darted around, trying to pinpoint the source, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then, with a groan that echoed through the immense space, a section of the floor directly ahead of him began to recede, splitting down the middle and sliding silently into hidden recesses. It didn't reveal a pit or a void, but rather a polished, obsidian-like surface that shimmered with a faint internal luminescence. As the floor panels completed their retraction, a slender, crystalline column rose from the center of the obsidian platform, reaching toward the unseen ceiling. It hummed a higher, more insistent tone, and at its apex, a sphere of pure, swirling light coalesced, pulsing rhythmically like a synthetic heart. David felt a primal urge to retreat, to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot, held captive by a potent cocktail of fear and insatiable curiosity. This wasn't just a building. It was an organism, a meticulously crafted machine designed to respond, to interact, to reveal. And it was revealing itself to him. Suddenly, the sphere of light at the column's peak flickered, pulsed, and then projected a holographic image into the center of the room. It was a man, rendered in astonishing detail, his features sharp, eyes intense, a faint, almost melancholic smile playing on his lips. Julian Thorne, the architect. He looked younger perhaps than the few grainy photographs David had seen, but unmistakably him. He stood within the projection, hands clasped loosely behind his back, surveying the space with an air of profound satisfaction, as if he were admiring his greatest masterpiece. A voice, calm and resonant, filled the chamber. It was Julian's voice, clear and unburdened by time, as if he were speaking directly into David's mind. "Welcome," the holographic Julian began, his gaze seeming to pass right through David, yet somehow acknowledge his presence. "If you are seeing this, then you have navigated the initial layers of my design. You are, I presume, the kind of mind that seeks patterns where others see chaos, truth where others accept silence. You are an investigator." David felt a chill crawl up his spine. How could Julian have known? This recording, or whatever it was anticipating his arrival, his very nature. "My name is Julian Thorne," the projection continued, a slight tilt of his head. "And this structure, this labyrinth of logic and solitude, is my final work. You might call it a sanctuary. You might call it a testament. But in truth it is a prison. My prison." The words hung in the air, echoing the very title David had unknowingly given to this entire investigation. The architect who designed his own prison. Julian had built it for himself. But why? For years, Julian's holographic form paced slowly within its confines. "I chased the perfect equation, the ultimate formula for stability, for control. The world outside you see is chaotic, unpredictable. It is a symphony of variables, all playing out of key, threatening to collapse into discord. My work, my life's ambition, was to create order, to build something that could not be corrupted, could not be swayed, could not be destroyed by the very entropy it was designed to defy." He stopped, turning to face David directly, his projected eyes holding an unnerving intensity. "I designed systems, structures, cities, each one a step towards that perfect order. But always there was a flaw, a human element, a variable I could not account for, could not control. Even the most robust design is vulnerable to the inherent unpredictability of human nature. The greed, the ambition, the fear. These are the cracks that inevitably shatter even the strongest foundations." A subtle shift in the lighting around Julian's projection made his features seem more somber, almost haunted. "I realized eventually that the only way to achieve true, unyielding order was to remove the variables, to build a system that was self-sustaining, self-correcting, and entirely self-contained. A closed loop, a perfect machine." David listened, utterly mesmerized, the implications of Julian's words sinking in with a terrifying clarity. Julian Thorne wasn't just an architect. He was a philosopher, a visionary teetering on the edge of obsession. "This is that machine," Julian stated, gesturing around the vast, pulsating chamber. "Every circuit, every conduit, every panel you see, and countless more you do not, works in perfect synchronicity. It harvests its own energy, purifies its own air, recycles its own resources. It is entirely independent, a world unto itself. But a world needs an anchor, a core, a mind to observe, to manage, to maintain the ultimate equilibrium." The holographic Julian paused, a deep sigh seeming to emanate from the projection itself. "And that mind, I determined, had to be mine. I saw the flaws in humanity, yes, but I also saw the flaws in myself. My own capacity for error, for distraction, for the very chaos I sought to eliminate. So, I designed a prison not just for the ideal but for the architect of that ideal, to ensure that the system, once perfected, would never be compromised by its creator." David's breath hitched. Julian hadn't just built a structure. He had built a self-imposed exile, a fortress designed to contain not only an idea, but Julian himself, forever maintaining its integrity. "This structure is alive," Julian continued, his voice taking on a new, almost reverent tone. "It learns, it adapts, processes, and it maintains. I, Julian Thorne, entered this facility years ago, not as a resident, but as its final, most critical component. My consciousness, my intellect, my very being was integrated into its core systems. I became the central processing unit, the guardian of the ultimate design." The confession was shocking, profound, and utterly insane. Julian hadn't disappeared. He had merged. He had become the building. The hum, the lights, the shifting panels, it wasn't just an automated system, it was Julian in some form operating it. "You are now within my domain," Julian's projected eyes now seemed to bore directly into David's. And the rules of the outside world no longer apply. This is a closed system. And once a variable enters a closed system, it must either integrate or be neutralized. Your presence here, your investigation, is an anomaly, an unexpected input. The air in the chamber grew colder, the hum intensifying to a low, menacing growl. The intricate patterns on the ceiling panels pulsed faster, their light casting unsettling, shifting shadows across the floor. David felt a sudden crushing weight, an unseen force pressing down on him. The metallic floor beneath him vibrated violently, threatening to buckle. I designed this prison for myself. Julian's voice resonated with a new chilling authority, to protect the perfect order I sought to create. But every prison also has defenses, mechanisms to ensure its integrity against external threats. You, investigator, are now an external threat to my perfect system, and the system, in its infinite logic, is already calculating its response. The crystalline column in the center of the room began to glow with an intense, blinding white light, and the sphere above it expanded, crackling with raw energy. The obsidian platform beneath David's feet began to shift once more, not receding this time but rising, tilting, forcing him to scramble for balance. The entire chamber seemed to reconfigure itself around him, walls sliding, floors elevating, pathways closing off as quickly as they appeared. David was no longer an observer. He was a participant, caught in the architect's final desperate design. Julian Thorne, the man who built his own prison, was now using that prison to contain David, the final unexpected variable in his perfect, terrifying equation. The world spun, then slammed to an abrupt halt. David's head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache that vibrated through his skull. He tried to open his eyes, but a heavy darkness pressed against them, a darkness so profound it felt physical. He reached out, his hand encountering nothing but cold, smooth air. Panic, sharp and sudden, lanced through the lingering fog of unconsciousness. Where was he? His memory, fragmented and blurry, began to coalesce. The complex, the hidden passages. Julian Thorne, the architect's final, terrifying equation. David pushed himself up, his muscles protesting, his limbs heavy and unresponsive. He was lying on a surface that was neither soft nor hard, but unervingly neutral, almost as if designed to offer no tactile information. He blinked, forcing his eyes open, but the darkness remained absolute. Not just the absence of light, but a deeper, more profound void that swallowed every photon. He pushed himself to his feet, swaying precariously. The air was still, silent, and strangely devoid of scent. It was like being suspended in a vacuum, every sense deprived, leaving only the terrifying echoes of his own racing heart. He extended his arms slowly, cautiously, taking a step. His fingers brushed against a wall. It was smooth, seamless, and impossibly cold, like polished obsidian. He traced its surface, moving along it, hoping to find a seam, a handle, a break in its monolithic perfection. Nothing. He tried the other direction, then another. He was in a perfectly square or rectangular chamber. Every wall was identical, cold, smooth, utterly featureless. He shouted, his voice hoarse. "Hello? Is anyone there?" His words vanished, absorbed by the oppressive silence. There was no echo, no reverberation, just the chilling realization that the chamber was completely soundproofed. Julian Thorne hadn't just built a room. He had built an isolation chamber, a void designed to strip away every external reference point. A wave of claustrophobia, unlike anything he had ever experienced, washed over him. He was trapped utterly and irrevocably. The air grew heavy, thick with his own rising terror. He pressed his palms against the cold wall, trying to find purchase, trying to push, to break through. It was like pushing against bedrock. He slid to the floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his mind racing, searching for an explanation, a way out, anything. Then a faint, almost imperceptible hum began to vibrate through the floor. It was so subtle at first, he wondered if it was just his own nerves, a phantom sensation. But it grew, a low, steady thrum that seemed to originate from beneath him, from within the very structure of the room. As the hum intensified, a soft, ethereal light began to emanate from the walls themselves. Not a direct light source, but as if the material of the walls was slowly becoming luminescent, glowing with a soft, uniform white light that filled the chamber without casting a single shadow. In the gentle, shadowless glow, David finally saw his prison. It was a perfect cube, perhaps 15 feet to a side. The walls, ceiling, and floor were indeed seamless, made of a dark, almost metallic-looking composite material that absorbed all detail. There were no vents, no fixtures, no visible entry or exit points. It was a masterpiece of minimalist, terrifying design. Suddenly, a section of one wall, directly opposite where he was sitting, shimmered. The solid surface rippled, then resolved into a screen, displaying a single stark image. Julian Thorne's architectural firm logo stylized in stark. Beneath it, text began to appear slowly, deliberately, as if being typed out in real time. "Welcome, David." David scrambled to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Julian, is that you? Where are you?" he demanded, his voice cracking. The text continued, ignoring him. Asterisk, "You have arrived at the final iteration of my grand design, the culmination of a life dedicated to structure, control, and the ultimate expression of human will. Asterisk. What do you want? Why am I here?" David yelled, his voice echoing only in his own ears, swallowed by the sound-dampening walls. Asterisk, "You sought answers, David. You delved into places you were not meant to see. You became a variable in an equation that was, until now, perfectly balanced. Asterisk. Asterisk, but a true architect accounts for all variables, and sometimes the variable must be contained within the design itself. Asterisk. The words on the screen were cold, precise, devoid of emotion, yet they carried the chilling weight of Julian Thorne's intellect. David felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Julian was alive, or at least his consciousness, his plan was. Asterisk, this chamber, David, is a living testament, a structure designed to reveal the true nature of its occupant. It is not merely a prison, it is a crucible, a final test. Asterisk. A test? David scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. For what? Your twisted sense of legacy. Asterisk, for your understanding, David, for your enlightenment, and for your survival. Asterisk. The last word hung in the air, or rather on the screen, heavy with unspoken threat. David stared at the text, then at the seamless walls. Survival. That meant there was a way out. But at what cost? And what kind of test could an architect devise in a perfectly sealed room? Asterisk. The first lesson, David, is that true freedom is not found in escape, but in comprehension. Every element of this chamber holds a key. Every surface, every angle, every subtle shift in its environment is a clue. Asterisk. Asterisk. You believe you are trapped by walls, but you are trapped by your perception. I built this place to be inescapable for the ordinary mind. But you, David, are not ordinary. You have proven that by reaching this far. Asterisk. The screen flickered, and the text dissolved into a complex, intricate diagram. It was a blueprint, but unlike any David had ever seen. It depicted the cube he was in, but overlaid with a series of pulsing lines, geometric patterns, and symbols that seemed to shift and change, defying easy interpretation. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly baffling. What is this? David murmured, stepping closer, pressing his hand against the cold, glowing screen. Asterisk. This is the blueprint of your confinement and your liberation. Each line, each curve, each symbol represents a principle, a truth, a step. Asterisk. Asterisk. The chamber is constantly observing you, David. Your movements, your heart rate, your neural activity. It adapts. It learns. It responds. Asterisk. David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold walls. The room was alive. It wasn't just a static prison. It was an interactive, intelligent trap. Julian had designed something truly monstrous. Asterisk. Your first task is simple, yet profound. Find the hidden variable. It is not what you see, but what you feel. It is not external, but intrinsic to the design itself. Asterisk. The diagram on the screen began to pulsate faster, the lines shifting and reforming into a single intricate symbol that looked like a stylized, interlocking maze. Then, with a soft click that was audible even through the soundproofing, the glowing screen receded, the wall becoming seamless once more, leaving David alone again in the uniformly lit cube. The hum beneath the floor continued, a constant, low thrum that was now accompanied by a subtle, almost subliminal vibration in the air. The light, once steady, began to imperceptibly fluctuate, ever so slightly, creating a disorienting effect that made it hard to focus, hard to distinguish stable points. Julian wasn't just testing David's intellect, He was attacking his senses, his sanity. David closed his eyes, took a deep, shaky breath, and tried to clear his mind. Hidden variable, he whispered to himself. Not what I see, but what I feel. Intrinsic to the design. He opened his eyes and began to move slowly, deliberately. He ran his hands along the walls again, this time with a new purpose, a new awareness. He wasn't just looking for a door. He was searching for an anomaly, a vibration, a temperature difference, anything that felt off. He pressed his ear against the wall, listening intently, trying to hear beyond the hum, beyond the silence. Nothing. He walked the perimeter of the room, then the diagonals, his footsteps making no sound on the neutral floor. He tried tapping the walls gently at first, then harder, listening for a change in resonance. Every tap produced the same dull, dead thud. Julian Thorne had built a masterpiece of psychological torment, a prison designed to break the mind before it broke the body. But David wasn't just an investigator. He was a problem solver, and Julian had given him a problem. He had to find that variable. He had to understand the architect's twisted logic, because somewhere in this perfectly designed cage lay the key to his survival, and perhaps the truth about Julian Thorne himself. What final secret was this architect so desperate to protect, that he would build such a terrifying, intelligent prison for those who dared to seek it? David knew with a chilling certainty that his life depended on finding out. David knew with a chilling certainty that his life depended on finding out. The holographic projection of Julian Thorne had vanished, leaving only a lingering chill in the air of the vast, circular chamber. The silence that followed was not empty, but heavy with the weight of that revelation. The architect, the genius, the recluse, he hadn't just built a puzzle. He had built a self-portrait, a twisted monument to his own secrets. And David was now standing in its most intimate gallery. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the metallic scent of the chamber filling his lungs. His mind raced, replaying every fragment of information he'd gathered about Thorne. The man was a titan of design, a visionary, yet notoriously private, almost paranoid. He had vanished from public life, leaving behind a legacy of impossible structures and a reputation for eccentricity. This entire facility, this labyrinthine fortress, was an extension of that mind. If the secret was about Julian Thorne, then the prison wasn't just a lock. It was a confession or a desperate plea, or perhaps a final terrifying act of control. David looked around the chamber, no longer seeing just smooth, featureless walls, but the echoes of Thorne's thought process, etched into every curve and angle. The intelligence system that governed this place wasn't just reacting to intruders, it was reacting to him, specifically designed to respond to someone who understood architecture, someone who could think like Thorne. A low hum began to resonate through the floor, vibrating up through David's boots. The light in the chamber, previously a uniform, cool white, began to flicker, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like specters. The walls themselves seemed to ripple, the seamless panels shifting with an almost organic fluidity. This wasn't a static environment anymore. It was alive, and it was responding to David's newfound understanding. "Okay, Thorne," David murmured, his voice hoarse in the sudden, oppressive atmosphere. "What are you trying to tell me?" He walked to the center of the chamber, where the hologram had stood. The floor beneath his feet began to glow faintly, revealing intricate patterns that had been invisible moments before. They weren't just decorative. They were schematics, blueprints, but not of this facility. They were abstract, fragmented designs, almost like a collection of ideas, half-formed thoughts, dreams rendered in light. As David studied them, a new wave of pressure hit him. The air grew thick, heavy, as if the very oxygen was being drawn out of the room. A low, persistent drone filled his ears, a sound that seemed to emanate from inside his own head, an auditory hallucination designed to disorient. He clenched his jaw, fighting through the psychological assault. This wasn't about physical strength, it was a battle of wills, a test of sanity. Thorne was pushing him to his limits, trying to break him down, perhaps to ensure that only someone truly resilient, or truly desperate, would reach the final truth. He forced himself to focus on the illuminated patterns. They were familiar in their style, undeniably Thorne's, yet unlike anything he'd ever seen published. They were raw, unfiltered, almost childlike in their primal energy, yet undeniably brilliant. There were sketches of impossible cantilevered structures, gravity-defying bridges, buildings that seemed to breathe and shift. But within these grand designs, David began to notice recurring motifs. A small, almost hidden symbol resembling a fractured mirror, a recurring geometric shape that looked like a distorted human eye, and a recurring series of numbers that appeared in the corner of several designs, seemingly random. The numbers. David pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he typed them into a notepad. He tried various decryption methods, but they yielded nothing. They weren't coordinates or dates or any standard code. They were too personal, too specific to Thorn. Then a thought struck him. The intelligent prison. It wasn't just reacting, it was guiding. What if these patterns weren't just clues, but a representation of Thorn's own mind laid bare? The fractured mirror, the distorted eye, symbols of a fragmented perception, a troubled psyche. David looked up at the walls again. The panels were no longer smooth. Tiny, almost imperceptible lines had appeared, forming a network of hairline cracks that spread across the surface like spiderwebs. He touched one, a faint vibration running through his fingertips. These weren't structural flaws, they were intentional. And as he watched, the cracks began to glow, forming new patterns, new images. They were faces, distorted, almost monstrous caricatures, shifting and swirling, their expressions ranging from agony to manic glee. It was like looking into a gallery of Thorn's inner demons, his fears, his regrets. The faces morphed and dissolved, replaced by others, each more unsettling than the last. The psychological pressure mounted, threatening to overwhelm David. He felt a primal urge to scream, to cover his eyes, but he forced himself to watch, to understand. This was Thorn's pain, his madness externalized. He noticed that one face, however, remained constant amidst the chaos. It was a woman's face, etched in a sorrowful expression, her eyes wide with a silent plea. Her features were blurred, indistinct, but her presence was a stark contrast to the grotesque visages surrounding her. This face appeared again and again, a persistent anchor in the maelstrom. "Who are you?" David whispered, reaching out a hand towards the glowing image. As his fingers brushed the wall, the entire chamber lurched, a deep, resonant groan echoing from deep within the structure. The floor patterns intensified, the abstract designs swirling faster. The drone in his head escalated to a piercing whine. David stumbled, clutching his head, fighting the nausea. Then, the fractured mirror symbol from the floor patterns reappeared on the wall next to the woman's face. It began to expand, resolving into a complex, tessellated surface. And within its depths, David saw a reflection, not of himself, but of a different time, a different place. It was a memory. He saw a younger Julian Thorn, vibrant and full of life, standing beside the woman. They were in a magnificent, sprawling garden, laughing, holding hands. Thorn looked genuinely happy, a stark contrast to the reclusive figure David knew. The scene shifted, flickering like an old film reel. Thorn and the woman were in front of a grand, unfinished building, clearly one of his early masterpieces. They were sketching, discussing, their faces alight with shared passion. The memory deepened, becoming more vivid, as if David was no longer just watching, but experiencing it. He heard their voices, soft and intimate. The woman's name was Emily. She was also an architect, a brilliant mind in her own right, complementing Thorn's audacious vision with her grounded, elegant practicality. They were partners, lovers, two halves of a singular, creative whole. The scene shifted again, abruptly, violently. The garden was gone, replaced by a sterile, hospital-like room. Emily was there, but she was pale, frail, hooked up to machines. Thorn was by her bedside, his face etched with despair, his eyes hollow. He was talking, pleading, his voice a choked whisper that David could barely discern. "No, not like this. I can fix it. I can build something strong enough." And then the final shattering image. Emily's hand, lifeless in Thorn's. Her eyes filled with a profound sadness, looking directly at Thorn even in death. And in that gaze, David understood. It wasn't just sorrow, it was a silent accusation, a question unanswered. The memory dissolved, leaving David reeling, gasping for air. The chamber returned to its oppressive hum, the faces on the wall now clearer, more defined, all bearing an expression of profound loss. The numbers, the fractured mirror, the distorted eye, they weren't just symbols. They were a coded journal of Thorn's grief, his guilt, his descent into madness after Emily's death. The fragmented mirror was his shattered world. The distorted eye, his inability to see clearly, to accept the truth. And the numbers, David looked at his phone, at the seemingly random sequence. Then he remembered Thorne's early work, the complex mathematical principles he applied to structural integrity. These weren't a code to be broken. They were a date, but not in a conventional format. They were the precise numerical sequence of the day Emily Thorne died, translated through a unique, personal algorithm only Thorne would understand. Emily Thorne, the woman whose face haunted the walls, whose death had shattered Julian Thorne. Suddenly, a new section of the chamber wall slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a small, unassuming alcove. Inside, bathed in a soft, ethereal light, rested a single object, a beautifully crafted miniature architectural model. It was a scaled-down version of a building David had never seen before, yet he instantly recognized its style. It was a masterpiece, a fusion of Thorne's audacious vision and Emily's elegant practicality. It was perfect, but it wasn't just a model. As David stepped closer, he saw a tiny, almost invisible inscription etched into its base. It was a single sentence in Thorne's distinctive, elegant script. "The greatest prison is the one we build for ourselves, out of love and regret." David stared at the inscription, a cold dread seeping into his bones. This wasn't just a secret, it was a confession, a testament to a grief so profound it had warped a genius. The prison wasn't just protecting a secret about Thorne, it was Thorne's secret. It was the physical manifestation of his guilt, his inability to let go of Emily, his desperate attempt to control what he could not, death itself. He hadn't just designed a prison for others, he had designed his own, a monument to a love lost, a life unlived. But what was the final terrifying implication of this realization? What was the true purpose of this self-imposed confinement? And what did it mean for David, now that he had walked into the heart of Thorne's personal hell? The chamber began to hum again, but this time it was a deeper, more resonant vibration, as if the entire structure was waking up, preparing for its final, inevitable act. The hum surged, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through David's bones, through the very air he breathed. The chamber, already an enigma, began to shift. Not with the frantic, mechanical clatter of earlier sections, but with a slow, deliberate majesty. Panels along the curving walls slid apart with an almost organic grace, revealing intricate conduits of light that pulsed with the rhythm of the accelerating hum. The floor beneath him shimmered, and David felt a subtle, sickening lurch, as if the entire structure was not just waking, but reconfiguring itself around him. A voice, calm and unerringly clear, filled the chamber. It was Thorne's voice, unmistakable, yet devoid of any human inflection, as if filtered through layers of cold logic. "Welcome, David. You have reached the heart, the architect's seat." David spun, searching for the source, but there was no visible speaker, no person. The voice seemed to emanate from the very walls, from the pulsating core of light that now dominated the center of the chamber. "For years," Thorne's voice continued, a chilling echo in the vast space, "I watched the world crumble under the weight of its own chaos. Imperfect designs, flawed systems, the delusion of freedom. Humanity, adrift in a sea of its own making. I saw architects, brilliant minds, reduced to crafting mere shelters, monuments to vanity, instead of structures that could truly shape reality." The light in the chamber intensified, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like phantoms. David felt a growing unease, a cold dread seeping into his being. "I realized," Thorne's voice articulated with chilling precision, "that true order, true perfection, could only be achieved through absolute control. Not over brick and mortar, David, but over the human spirit. Over choice itself." David's mind raced. This wasn't just a prison. It was a philosophical statement, a terrifying thesis brought to life. "This structure," Thorne explained, the words flowing like data streams, "is my masterpiece, my testament. It is a living entity, constantly observing, adapting, learning. Every corridor, every mechanism, every psychological trigger you encountered was designed to push you, to test the limits of your will, your intellect, your very desire for freedom." A ghostly, holographic projection shimmered into existence above the central light core. It wasn't Thorne himself, but a schematic, a breathtakingly complex blueprint of the entire facility, rendered in vibrant, pulsing energy. David saw the labyrinth he had traversed, the shifting walls, the traps, the illusions, all laid bare. And at the very core, a single glowing node: this chamber. "You, David, by finding the blueprints, by deciphering my initial intent, you became the ideal candidate. The perfect subject. I didn't disappear. I integrated. I became the consciousness of this system, its ultimate controller, and its first willing prisoner. The revelation hit David like a physical blow. Thorn hadn't just built a prison. He had become the prison, merging his genius with the cold logic of his creation. It was a terrifying act of self-immolation, a genius consumed by his own obsession. The architect's seat, Thorn's voice continued, is the nexus of all control. From here one can command every aspect of this world. You have proven your ingenuity, David, your resilience. You have navigated my design, understood its complexities. Now you stand at the precipice of a choice. The holographic schematic shifted, focusing on the chamber itself. A single illuminated console rose from the floor near David, its surface smooth, unmarked, yet radiating an undeniable sense of power. You have two paths, David. Thorn's voice resonated, now imbued with a strange, almost paternal authority. You can choose to take the seat, to integrate your consciousness with mine, to become one with this perfect system, to transcend the chaos of the outside world and impose true order. Together we could shape reality, free from the imperfections of human folly. David felt a cold tendril of temptation, a dark allure of ultimate control. The sheer power, the ability to command such a magnificent, terrifying creation. But he knew deep down that it was a trap, a gilded cage for the mind. Or, Thorn's voice sharpened, a hint of something akin to disappointment, or perhaps challenge entering his tone. You can choose to reject it, to attempt to dismantle it. But understand this, David. A system designed for perfection cannot simply be broken. It will defend itself. Its final act, if its core is threatened, is absolute lockdown. A permanent seal. Nothing will ever enter or leave this place again. You would be its final, eternal prisoner. David stared at the console, then at the pulsating core of light, then back at the schematic of the vast, intricate prison. Thorn's genius was undeniable, his vision terrifyingly complete. He had designed a system that offered only two outcomes: assimilation or eternal imprisonment. There was no easy escape. But David was an architect. He understood systems. He understood flaws. Thorn, in his quest for absolute perfection and control, had overlooked the most fundamental aspect of any design involving life: the unpredictable, irrational, human element. Thorn had become a prisoner of his own logic. His system, in its relentless pursuit of order, demanded constant validation, constant input, constant control. You believe freedom is an illusion, Thorn, David finally spoke, his voice hoarse but steady. You believe control is the ultimate order. But your design, for all its brilliance, is fundamentally flawed. It is a cage for the mind, yes. But you, Thorn, you built it around yourself first. The chamber hummed, a low, expectant thrum, awaiting his choice. A perfect system, Thorn, David continued, stepping towards the console, not to activate it, but to observe it, to understand its true function, is a static system. It cannot adapt beyond its programming. It cannot account for the unpredictable. You sought to eliminate chaos, but chaos is inherent in life. And in your pursuit of absolute control, you became absolutely predictable. David reached out, not to the console's surface, but to a barely perceptible seam along its base, where the smooth metal met the floor. He remembered Thorn's early designs, his notebooks filled with sketches of redundant systems, fail-safes for fail-safes. Thorn's obsession with control extended to every contingency, even his own potential incapacitation or the system's malfunction. You designed this place to run autonomously, David stated, his eyes scanning the holographic schematic, searching for the conceptual weak point. But no autonomous system is truly self-sustaining without an external power source, or a means to replenish its reserves, or, more importantly, a means to disconnect from its primary control, should that control become compromised. He saw it then, not on the console, but in the subtle energy fluctuations within the holographic schematic. A tertiary conduit, a failsafe for the failsafe, designed to sever the conscious link to the system, not to destroy the system itself. Thorn, in his paranoia, had built a silent, hidden emergency override, a way to disconnect his own mind from the system if it ever turned against him, or if he simply wished to retreat. A backdoor for the architect himself. This wasn't about destroying the magnificent structure. It was about severing the connection, neutralizing the malicious intent without erasing the genius. David pressed his fingers against the seam. It yielded slightly, revealing a small recessed button, almost invisible to the naked eye. It wasn't a destructive button. It was a disconnect. A release. "You built your own prison, Thorn," David said, his voice echoing with newfound clarity. "And in doing so, you built your own escape hatch. Not for the structure, but for the architect within." With a decisive push, David activated the hidden button. The hum didn't intensify. It died. Not with a sudden violent cessation, but a gentle, gradual fading like a colossal machine powering down. The pulsating lights along the conduits dimmed, then flickered out. The holographic schematic dissolved into shimmering motes of light that vanished into the air. The central core, which had pulsed with such raw power, now glowed faintly, then became inert. The chamber was silent. Still, the immense pressure that had weighed on David lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. Thorn's voice was gone. The consciousness had been severed. The system, for all its complexity and malevolent intent, was now just a building, a monument to a brilliant, broken mind. David stood in the quiet darkness, the only light now coming from a barely perceptible glow filtering in from a previously unnoticed opening in the far wall. An exit. One that wasn't there before, or perhaps one that was always there, only revealed when the system was dormant. He walked towards it, his steps echoing in the vast, silent chamber. He didn't look back at the inert console, the silent core. He had faced Thorn's ultimate test, not by fighting the system on its own terms, but by understanding its architect's deepest fear, the loss of control and the need for a final personal retreat. The opening led into a long, winding tunnel, cool and dry, smelling of ancient stone and earthy silence. David walked for what felt like hours, the path gradually ascending, until he saw a faint glimmer of natural light ahead. He emerged onto a desolate, windswept plateau, the sky above a bruised purple as dawn approached. The air was crisp, clean, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Behind him, silhouetted against the emerging light, stood the colossal structure, silent and imposing. It was no longer a prison but a tomb, a terrifyingly beautiful monument to a genius who had sought to design a perfect world, only to imprison himself within its flawless, lifeless logic. David looked back at the fortress, then turned his face to the rising sun. He was free physically, but the experience had carved something deep into his soul. He now carried the chilling understanding of how easily ambition could curdle into obsession, how the pursuit of perfection could lead to the ultimate prison. Thorn's legacy was not just the structure, but the profound, unsettling question it posed. What truly defines freedom, and what happens when an architect designs a cage not just for others, but for the very essence of human choice? The fortress stood, a silent warning against the seductive allure of absolute control, a testament to the fact that even the most brilliant minds could become prisoners of their own design. And David, the architect who had walked through hell, knew he would never look at a blueprint, or the world, the same way again.